Well, I suppose obviously the biggest influence would have had to be my dad. My dad was football mad and absolutely loved football. He played football. He was a good non-league footballer. He had fantastic ability, really, the old man. And when he came back from the war, you know, I think that it was difficult then. But he played to a good standard, and he was a real good player. And he really, you know, took me to football every week. We went to football together, and he followed me all through my career. And as a schoolboy, he was there every week taking me to football or coming with me on the buses. We didn't have a car, but so he was a massive influence. He just loved football. And we're very similar in the respect that, you know, I love football. You know, if there was a game on over the park, he'd go and watch it. And he followed schoolboy football, East London boys. He'd watch every game. And so we're very similar in that respect. He was obviously a massive influence. And then when I went into football, obviously I think Ron Greenwood, the manager, was a great coach, and I was very lucky to go to a football club where, you know, I was working with a man who was so forward thinking in his coaching methods, and he was a great influence on everybody who ever played at West Ham. So I was very lucky. And then I think John Bond, I played with John and came to Bournemouth, and he was a great coach. So I was lucky really to work with under some good football people. We all loved, yeah, it was in the family really, you know. I think we all just loved, we enjoyed football. It was a big part of our lives, you know. I didn't force the boys into playing football, you know. Jamie used to come training with me, him and Mark, when, you know, we went to America. I played out in Seattle, and they would come training every day and spend all day out on the training pitch, you know, kicking the ball around while we were training as a team. And they spent their life around footballers. So, but the most important thing you've got to have is the ability, obviously, and Jamie had the ability to play at the top level. So, you know, he never really wanted to do anything else but be a footballer. And Mark was unlucky. He was a good player, and he broke his ankle terribly when he was only sort of 18 playing at Bournemouth, and it really finished him. You know, he ended up with an ankle that he was in such a mess that he couldn't play with it really. So, but they both loved it. So I didn't push it on them. It was just natural. They didn't come over from school, or I'd go and watch them play on a Sunday or whatever. I didn't batter them and say, "Oh, you should be doing this or doing that." We went. I stood quietly out the way. Me and Sandra watched the games and let them just go and enjoy playing football. There's nothing worse as a kid than it must be terrible to have your parents or your dad coming home shouting and screaming at you and telling you ain't doing this or telling you to do. I think the enjoyment would go out of it. I didn't do that. I just let them get on and play and enjoy their football. Oh, it was a great era to play, I think, you know, sort of 60s, 70s. And I was lucky at West Ham, you know. We had people there. Bobby Moore. Bobby was fantastic, you know. He was the captain, and he was just a fantastic person and a great player. Captain England, obviously, to win the World Cup. You know, we had Jeff Hurst, Martin Peters. We had 3 England players at the club, and then you had people like Billy Bonds was a great player. Trevor Brooking, Frank Lampard. You know, there were lots of good players at the club at that time. And it was a great club to be at because we were all sort of London boys, all local boys, all come from the same sort of backgrounds, if you like, and we all had, you know, it was just a great time to be a footballer. We all come from working class backgrounds and all wanted to be footballers, so it was a good place to go. West Ham was a great club for producing homegrown players. We didn't used to buy any players. Every player sort of come through the youth team. Oh, I've got lots of people I regret buying, that's for sure, over the years. I think we all have, you know. But not buying, difficult really. I've missed out on, like everybody, you miss out on loads of players, you know. But there's always players, you know, that I think you regret not, you tried to sign, but I'm trying to think of somebody who's, Ian Wright was probably the biggest one when Cole Richards, who I signed from non-league football, asked me if his mate could have a trial for the club. And I asked Carl if he was better than him, and he said no. So I said, well, tell him not to bother then, and it turned out it was Ian Wright. So he was playing non-league football at the time, I think at Greenwich or somebody. So he went on to be one of the great strikers in English football. So I should have given Wrighty a trial, that's for sure.